My name is Anthony. I was 37 years old at the time this started, living in New York, married for over a decade, with a young son and another child on the way. My wife was 4 months pregnant, and from the outside, our life looked exactly how it was supposed to look: stable, responsible, complete. I had a good job, a management position, and enough income to comfortably support my family. We weren't struggling. We weren't fighting. There was no betrayal, no shouting, no obvious cracks in our marriage. That's what makes this harder to explain and harder to excuse. After our first child was born, something slowly changed between us. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just gradually, over time. My wife became a mother in a way that consumed her entirely. Her focus shifted to schedules, routines, sleep deprivation, and doing everything right for our son. I admired her for it. I still do. But somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like her partner and started feeling like part of the infrastructure. Necessary, reliable, but rarely noticed. Our conversations became functional, about bills, about plans, about logistics. Physical closeness became rare and careful, as if intimacy was another responsibility instead of something spontaneous. I told myself this was normal, that this is what long-term relationships look like once children enter the picture. I didn't blame her. I didn't complain. I swallowed it and focused on being useful. When she got pregnant again, I doubled down on that role. I worked longer hours, took on more responsibility, became even more dependable. I thought that if I kept everything stable, the rest would eventually fall back into place. That's when Claire joined our department. She was new, mid-20s, recently moved to New York, smart, confident, and still untouched by routine. I was her direct supervisor, which already makes this story worse, and I'm fully aware of that. At first, there was nothing inappropriate. No flirting, no tension, just work. She asked questions, listened carefully, took notes. She was good at what she did and eager to improve. But there was something else. The way she looked at me when I spoke, like my opinions carried weight beyond my title. That feeling caught me off guard. Being seen again, being interesting to someone, being more than just a provider or a background presence in my own life. About a month in, the tone shifted. Not suddenly, just subtly. Conversations lasted longer. Jokes became more personal. Compliments slipped in, disguised as casual remarks. "You're not what I expected," she said once, in a good way. I knew that moment mattered. I knew I should have drawn a clear line. I didn't. Another month passed, and the line faded almost completely. Late hours at the office became normal. One evening, when most people had already left, we crossed a boundary that neither of us could honestly pretend was an accident. I went home that night sick with guilt. I couldn't look my wife in the eyes. I watched her sleeping, one hand resting on her stomach, our unborn child growing inside her, and felt disgusted with myself. I told myself it was a mistake, a lapse, something that would never happen again. For weeks, I kept my distance. Short answers at work, no personal conversations, strict professionalism. I tried to convince myself I could erase what had happened by refusing to acknowledge it. Then she messaged me, nothing explicit, just checking in, asking if I was okay. And I answered. That's when I stopped pretending this was just a mistake. I didn't stop loving my wife. That's the part people simplify too easily. I loved her deeply. I still do. I didn't want to leave her. I didn't want to destroy my family or traumatize my children. I wanted to be a present father, a stable husband. But I also wanted to feel wanted again. And once I realized I could have both, even temporarily, I didn't stop myself. That was the moment the double life truly began. After that first time, I told myself I would stop, that I had crossed a line and was smart enough to step back before things got worse. I believed that because I needed to believe it. Admitting otherwise would have meant admitting that I was capable of doing something I had judged other men for my entire life. For a while, I managed to keep distance. At work, I stayed professional. Short conversations, no private moments. I focused on tasks, meetings, deadlines. I convinced myself that if I acted normal long enough, the situation would dissolve on its own. It didn't. The tension didn't disappear. It concentrated. Every glance felt heavier. Every shared moment felt intentional. When we spoke, there was something unspoken hanging between us, something that didn't need to be named to exist. Eventually, we stopped pretending. The second time didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like a decision, a quiet one, but deliberate. And with that decision came something unexpected: relief. The crushing guilt I had carried after the first time was still there, but it was softer now, easier to push aside. That scared me more than anything else. We started meeting outside the office. At first, rarely, carefully, always with excuses prepared in advance. Late meetings, client dinners, emergency calls. I hated how easily the lies formed once I needed them. My wife never questioned me. She trusted me completely. That trust should have stopped me. Instead, it made the deception easier. I told myself I was protecting her, that as long as she didn't know, she wasn't being hurt, that I was carrying the burden alone. That's a lie people tell themselves when they want to keep going. Claire didn't pressure me. She never asked me to leave my wife. She never demanded more than I was willing to give. In some ways, that made everything worse. There was no villain to blame, no dramatic conflict to justify my behavior. It was comfortable. At home, my life continued as expected. Doctor's appointments, nursery preparations, late-night conversations about baby names. I was present, attentive, supportive. I didn't withdraw emotionally. If anything, I tried harder. I think part of me was trying to balance the scales. At work, the relationship deepened. We talked about more than just attraction. She listened to me in ways I hadn't realized I was missing. Asked about my thoughts, my frustrations, my regrets. She didn't see me as a father or a provider or a husband. She saw me as a man. That distinction mattered more than I wanted to admit. The guilt didn't vanish completely. It visited me at night, when the house was quiet and my wife slept beside me. It showed up when I watched my son laugh or felt the baby kick during doctor visits. But it no longer controlled my actions. I learned how to compartmentalize. Home was one version of me. Work was another. And the space between them became a place where consequences didn't exist, at least not yet. By the time my wife gave birth to our second child, nearly a year had passed since the affair began. She stayed home with the kids. I became the sole provider. I worked long hours and earned well. On the surface, I was doing exactly what was expected of me, and I used that expectation as cover. Meetings turned into hotel rooms. Over time, turned into private apartments. The lies grew more detailed, more polished. I told myself I was still in control because nothing had exploded yet. But control is an illusion when you're constantly hiding. There were moments when I looked at myself and didn't recognize who I was becoming. Not because I felt remorse, but because I felt normal. That was the most unsettling part. The affair stopped feeling like a crisis and started feeling like part of my routine. I wanted my wife, I wanted my family, and I wanted this other life too. Stopping felt harder than continuing, and that's when I realized something important. Not about marriage or loyalty, but about myself. I wasn't trapped. I was choosing this. After our second child was born, Life slowed down at home and accelerated everywhere else. My wife was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. 2 kids, sleepless nights, constant responsibility. She rarely complained, but I could see it in the way she moved through the house and how little energy she had left for anything beyond survival. I tried to help when I was home. I really did. But most days, I wasn't. I told myself I was providing, and technically, I was. I became the sole income. I worked more, earned more, took on additional responsibilities at the office. From the outside, I looked like a man doing everything right, a husband stepping up, a father carrying the weight. Inside, I was living 2 separate lives that barely touched. Claire remained part of my workday, but our relationship existed almost entirely outside the office now. We were careful, professional in front of others, invisible. No one suspected anything, or if they did, they never said a word. We met after work, sometimes at her place, sometimes at hotels where no one asked questions. It became routine, disturbingly so. I learned which excuses sounded most natural, which lies required the least explanation, which details to avoid. I didn't feel like a liar anymore. That scared me. There were moments when I watched my wife holding our newborn, our older son sitting beside her, and felt something close to panic. Not guilt. Fear. Fear of what would happen if this collapsed. Fear of the damage I knew I was capable of causing. And yet, I didn't stop. I told myself I deserved this, that I had sacrificed enough, that I wasn't abandoning my family, just carving out something for myself in a life that no longer felt like it belonged to me entirely. Claire never pushed for more. She didn't ask me to leave. She didn't talk about a future together. She understood the limits, or at least accepted them. That made it easier to justify everything. There was no ultimatum forcing a decision. I could pretend this wasn't going anywhere, but it was. Emotionally, something shifted. The excitement faded and was replaced by familiarity. Comfort. She knew me, the real version of me, the one who wasn't tired, responsible, or constantly needed. With her, I didn't have to be strong. I didn't have to lead. I didn't have to perform. At home, I played my role perfectly. I was present at birthdays, at doctor visits, at school events. I held my newborn at night. I kissed my wife goodbye every morning. I told her I loved her, and I meant it. That contradiction lived inside me constantly. I wasn't looking to escape my marriage. I wasn't planning to leave my children. I wasn't chasing a new life. I was maintaining a secret one. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered how long this could last. Not if it would end, but how. Quietly, explosively. With discovery or with exhaustion. I imagined every possible outcome, and none of them felt survivable. Still, I continued, because by then, stopping meant facing myself fully. It meant admitting that I had made choices I couldn't undo, that I wasn't a man who slipped once, but a man who built an entire routine around betrayal. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I didn't need anyone to tell me that. But knowing something is wrong doesn't always give you the strength to stop. Sometimes, it just makes you better at living with it. And that's where I was. Not proud, not repentant, just aware. Living a life that worked on the surface and rotted quietly underneath. Over time, the weight of what I was doing didn't crush me. It settled into me. That's the part I find hardest to explain. People imagine guilt as something loud and unbearable, something that forces a decision. For me, it became quiet, manageable, something I carried without thinking about it constantly. That doesn't make it better. If anything, it makes it worse. I didn't wake up every day hating myself. I didn't panic before coming home. I didn't feel like I was about to be exposed at any moment. I adapted. I learned how to exist inside the contradiction without it tearing me apart. At home, life continued. My wife stayed focused on the children. Our newborn grew stronger. Our older son became more independent. The house was loud, busy, alive. I was part of it. I helped. I listened. I cared. I wasn't emotionally absent, and I wasn't pretending to be someone else. That's what makes this story uncomfortable. I wasn't a neglectful husband. I wasn't an absent father. I wasn't running from my responsibilities. I was adding something I knew didn't belong there. Claire remained part of my life, but she didn't consume it. She wasn't asking for promises or futures. She knew my situation. She knew I wasn't leaving, and she accepted that. Or at least, she said she did. We talked less about feelings and more about routine. When to meet, where, how long. It became efficient, contained, almost practical. The passion faded into familiarity, but the habit remained. I sometimes wondered what would happen if my wife found out. Not in a dramatic way, not imagining scenes or confrontations, just a quiet thought that passed through my mind late at night. I knew it would destroy her. I knew it would reshape my children's lives in ways I couldn't fix. That knowledge didn't stop me. I told myself I was choosing the lesser harm, that as long as the truth stayed hidden, everyone was protected. That ending the affair wouldn't undo the damage anyway. It would only force it into the open. That logic isn't noble. It's convenient. I didn't confess because I wanted absolution. I didn't stop because I didn't know how. At some point, I realized that what kept me going wasn't desire anymore. It was inertia. The momentum of choices already made. The fear of disruption. The discomfort of change. Staying felt easier than confronting the consequences of stopping. And that's where I am now. I'm not writing this because I expect sympathy. I'm not looking for validation or excuses. I know exactly how this sounds. I know what most people will think of me. Reddit is the only place where I can say this without destroying the life I'm trying to preserve. I love my wife. I love my children. And I am actively betraying that life. Both things are true at the same time. I don't know how this ends. I don't know if I'll stop, or if circumstances will force it to stop for me. I don't know whether silence is protecting my family, or quietly poisoning it. What I do know is this. I am fully aware of my choices. I'm not confused. I'm not lost. I'm just unwilling to blow everything up. So I'll ask the people reading this, not to judge, but to answer honestly. Is this kind of behavior unforgivable, even if the family never finds out? If you've been in something like this, on either side, what advice would you give someone who knows he's wrong, but can't bring himself to stop? I'm not asking to be excused. I'm asking because this is the only place where I can say it out loud. If you're enjoying this story, consider subscribing and leaving a like. It really helps the channel grow.